Okay, so looks like we are ready. So let's get started. And we are going to start right exactly where we left last time. We closed the previous entry by sharing you a three model that I am proposing for you to be able to put in just one place. So most of the, or understand most of the information that we get when we read a score, of course, a music score. And we wrapped up last week by sharing with you that part of the information we get is first, we started the first two sessions, we started talking about the note height or the frequency that refers to the note name and the octave that it depends to, which is what gives us the note height or the frequency. If you are singing a C natural or a C bemol, a D, we also read the notations in letters. If you're singing an E flat, an E sharp, etc., that's what has to do with the note height and frequency. And we also mentioned something that is very important, that it is the very objective and the only very objective dimension, the one where you cannot question whether the note is or is not in pitch. And then we moved for three more sessions talking about the second dimension, or a second dimension that we call tempo, and which is related to the note duration. So of course we know how high or what the note is, the frequency of it, but we need to understand how long it is going to last. And to understand how long it is going to last, we make use of the BPM, which is supposed to be the objective way of measuring it. And we also have the other, more or less figurative notations from starting from lento right up till allegro and presto and the other many notations that we discussed in our table that we have been building. We also talked about the duration of one, the duration of a half, of a four, of an 8, 16, and a 32, and we learned how to read them visually on the score, and we ran also some exercises to see how they also matched what is written on the score, and we closed till and I was forgetting, and this one is very discretionary, as we proved in the couple of examples that you can do it yourself as well to understand why I call it a very discretionary. It is, although it is thought to be very objective, truth is that it is very subjective, and it was one of the reasons I was sharing with you that those people who say that a maestro is perfect and is conducting in perfect tempo is just their minds playing tricks, because in order to ensure that, you need to run a number of calculations and time measurements that I can assure you that they are not actually doing. So, and the final dimension that we are checking today is related to the volume. So for a note to be understood, we need to know how high, what note was that, how much it's going to last. We need to understand how much it's going to last. But now we also need to understand what is going to be the volume associated with that, because you can say da, 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 and still keep it being the same note. But to understand that, we know first what the frequency was, we noticed what was the duration of it, and now we need to talk about the volume, and we are going to be checking in a second that these are the notations used for the volume, starting from the pianissimo at triple P and reaching its highest volume at the fortissimo with a triple F. And we are going to see that this one is also very discretionary, even though the same way as the tempo and the note duration, there is supposed to be a much more firm objective way of measuring it. So our session today is about this third dimension, the volume, and dynamics, because it is also referred to as the dynamics, displays with the dynamics of the interpretation. So let's move on for our very if not beautiful, or at least the one you are will are familiar with now. That is our Excel file where we have been building um, this content, and we are going to move. Well, I renamed the name of each of the sheets so that it matches what we've been talking about, and we are moving to the volume dimension. You can see here the source of this information. Of course, there are many, but the one that the reason why I liked it is basically because of two things. One, that it has different colors so that you can differentiate between each of these dynamics, and also because it includes what is expected or supposed to be the the measurement in decibels, which we are going to talk about very shortly. So there is also a description of how it's this supposed to be understood. So a triple P, when you see it on the score, which means very quiet, pianissimo, what truth is that we usually call it the triple P. So you may hear Katia or me or any other musician or any other person that is related to music to refer to this as the piano 1P, piano double P, or piano triple P. And you can see that the measurement in decibels is here, 30 decibels, 40 decibels, and 50 decibels. Unfortunately, since you don't have, well, I was supposed to be showing myself on the screen, now I'm back. Uh, since you don't have a point of reference, what exactly does very quiet mean? Is this ah, ah, da, da? Which of these is the very quiet pianissimo? Since remember that this is a very discretionary way of seeing things, you may be rehearsing with a given singer or with a given pianist or with a given director, and the perception of each of the persons around the triple P or the double P are different. This really varies depending on the person you are talking to. And I was referring that people are having a measurement in decibels, but unless you are familiar, and I would strongly suggest you that if you're into music and you would like to understand, you run some tests, download an app to your mobile. You can look for a decibel meter and you install it, and it will start giving you a number in decibels so that when you listen to a sound, you can gain more understanding of what volume that one actually is. There is also a downside on the number of decibels and also in the notations of the dynamics, which I am going to be explaining in a second. So these are the numbers, the numerical part, and this is what is the description of what we are talking about. So quiet, moderately quiet. The mezzo piano is not that often used, which is very often used in opera music is the mezzo forte. The forte, it is loud but not very loud. The double F, it is loud, known as fortissimo, and very, very loud. The strongest you can, it's the fortissimo. The same way as with the piano, we refer to these ones with as F forte, fortissimo double F or triple F, referring to the fortissimo. Instead of saying fortissimo, you say triple F, referring or giving you the idea of that volume. And I was telling you that this can be very tricky because the fortissimo, for a number of reasons, the fortissimo, according to this source, is 100 decibels. Opera voices, not all of them can reach 100 decibels. There is a very recent post where I was sharing with you around the tiny voice of Kathleen Battle, because tiny is a misunderstanding of what we are talking about in regards to the perception of the voice of a given singer above the volume of the orchestra. I made a clarification there that one thing is the power of those sound waves, which is what we perceive as volume and that is measured in decibels, and that you cannot be heard. That has to do that with the technique that the voice doesn't really what we call run. They are two very different terms. So don't think that because you are close to a singer and he sings very, very, very loud, around 90, 95 decibels, don't think that you will be able to listen to him in around 30 meters. If his technique is poor, most likely you won't listen to him. And if you have a given singer with a much more modest voice, but with a much better technique for the projection of his voice, maybe the highest he reaches around 80 or 85 decibels, but you can perfectly listen to him, if not with a higher volume. At least you can hear him, sometimes opposed to those that appear to be large voices. That was something that I wanted to clarify to you. Something else that I also wanted to share with you around these volumes, and that has to do with the measurement of decibels. The decibels is a very objective measure. I insist that maybe you go and download an app so that you can see those numbers by yourself. But keep in mind that this is what we call in mathematics a logarithmic scale. So between pianissimo, the triple P and the double P, you only have 10 decibels, but it is not a linear, it is not a line that you will see in regular increments. So it is not really 10 units of perceived power between 30 and 40, and there are not 10 between 40 and 50. It is a logarithmic scale, which means that the difference between each of the numbers tends to grow exponentially. So 80 is many more times higher than 70, and 70 is many more times higher than 60. It is not a number of 10. So you can have a singer who sings at 85, but between the singer who can reach 85 compared to the one that hits 80, the difference can be perceived this much, and it is only because it is not 5 in linear increments, but it is 5 in exponential. Let me see here. In exponential, 5 in exponential, not 5 in linear incremental numbers. You also can go and look for some videos on YouTube where this is explained. I am suggesting a video here, but you are free to go and look for the one that teaches you the best. At the end, my point here is that you are able to read or to understand that these notations of the dynamics have a very mm, discretionary way of making an interpretation of what is quiet, moderately loud, somewhat loud, and even if you give the numbers, unless you have a pattern or a point of reference, there is no clear indication of what a 40 of a 60 decibels may actually sound like. Many people give the reference that 50 could be a quiet room with people and 60 a room with people talking at a regular volume. 60 can be a noisy place to study, for instance, but 50 could be a library. But a 70 may be a busy street. And as I was sharing with you, 80 could be a very high sound that many operatic voices can reach. So the very loud fortissimo of around 100 could be reached by the orchestra, but certainly not by an operatic voice. And there is something else that I would like you to keep in mind. That is that the measurement, I am going to maybe make it here. I'm going to paint it black. And we are going to call the emitter of the sound, or the singer if you wish, and we are going to have two people listening to it. This is going to be listener A at a short distance, and we are going to have, let me move it more to the right so that you can actually see it, and we are going to have listener B. Listener B at a much more located much more farther. What's going to happen? That the distance between the emitter and the listener A is close. So he will perceive much more of that volume, of that amount of mechanical waves that are being produced. He's going to listen it much stronger in volume because of the distance, and the listener B will perceive it at a much lighter sound because of the distance, and that is because certainly it is a little obvious, but still I would like to explain it. The distance between the emitter and the receiver matters in the measurement of the decibels because, in fact, one of the factors of the formula is related to the distance. So, of course, the closer you are to the source, the louder you will listen to it. So you can say, I see he has a huge voice, but located at around 40 meters from him, as it would be an opera theater, he sounds with a huge voice, but I don't perceive it as sound as high. While the person who is maybe in the first three rows, they are going to perceive it at a much louder volume. But that only has to do because the number of decibels in the formula are closely related to the distance between the emitter and the listener. Okay, so with all that having been clarified, and I thought that it was going to be a much shorter video, I am going to share with you now an example because everything is much clearer with examples, and that will also provide us with the opportunity to see that we have actually learned a lot. We are going to use the absolutely immense Acerba voluta from Andrea Lecouvreur in Maestro Chilea's composition. And we are going to have, or we are going to be using the recording of an excellent singer. I am referring to, let me put it here. I am referring to a very great Mexican contralto. I am referring to Maestra Oralia Dominguez. I have talked about her in several entries already, more for many more known because of being the Neris opposite to Maria Callas in the Aidas Mexico City in 1851. But let's start checking on this. Take a look at the score and notice that we have our indication of the tempo where a quarter is 168. 168, if we go back to our example here, let me put it on the screen back again, you will notice that it's going to fall, the 168 is going to fall here around the range of the vivace, even though that comment you cannot find on the score. So that's how it's going to start. And so now we know that it's going to be very fast. And this is what we are about to hear. And we're going to stop it there because now we are going to see uh, the part where Maestro Aurelia Dominguez starts with singing in the Acerba Voluta, and I would like to call your attention to a couple of things on this score, now that you notice that you have learned a lot. One of the things that I forgot to mention, it's not only that we have the tempo, we have the treble or the G key here, which is for the high voices, and that is helpful for most of the voices. You can read contralto, mezzo, soprano, tenor, and also baritone, even though many times for baritone you use another key, but most of the voices can be read there. I didn't explain about this notation. This is very important because it summarizes on what notes you're going to have flats, but we already know the symbol because we explained the flats. At this point, don't worry about that because these are essential videos and this gets more and more complicated. So at this point, don't worry about that. And we also have, remember that the C also stands for a 4 by 4. It started at 6/4. It means that we expected 6 notes in the value of 4, which I also taught you earlier how to measure them. And you can read here that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the duration of fourths. What we are going to have just as the singer is about to start is that it slows a little. It says that it moves to an allegro of a quarter of a duration of 160. If we go to the 160, we notice that there is one that covers it, and it is Allegro, even though nobody seems to have, at least from these three sources, do not have a clear agreement, but it falls in Allegro, at least for the Harvard Music Dictionary. That's what the new duration is going to be for this part. And notice that we know that it has changed now to a 4 by 4, still in a G key, and notice that acerba, we can read now these notes here. There's going to be exceptions that I didn't explain because of this, but since I'm not planning to complicate it, we are going to just consider, unless there is a notation in front of the note, we are going to consider all the notes as I share with you without those symbols there. So we're going to talk next week about these notations on the score as well. It says dolorosamente, but it starts with a, look, duration of an eighth, duration of a half, and duration of a quarter. So in just one bar, we have that acerba voluta. This one is much shorter than acerba. Cerba is the longest syllable, and ba it's half the duration of acerba. That's how it is divided. This half, this a quarter, and this an eighth, which makes complicated, especially when you're starting to read, because this is going to be the shortest. They are chair, keep the chair, and then rise to an A with the ba, which lasts half of the cherba. Acerba voluta. And remember also that I shared with you that it is discretionary about the length, because you will realize that many times the singer keeps something either shorter or longer to impact the the emotion. Notice here that as we reach voluta, the vo has a sharp, so which means that you know that this is an e. It is an e sharp. That's what it is read. But remember also, let me see, we can put it very quickly on the going back to our, because I want to make it like a more complete example. Um, we are in the central of a soprano, yeah, and remember that we said that between the E and the F there is only a semitone. Since there is only a semitone, because I painted them, maybe you cannot see that clearly, it is in bold. So between the E and F, which is the place where we are talking about in this score, there is only half a semitone. Since there is a semitone, this sharp means that this is actually an F, and then decreases to the voluta, acerba voluta, and there is the symbol that I also shared with you earlier. This point in front of the note means that half the value is added. So if its value is one a half, and what is the half of the next value? It's a quarter. So it is a half and a quarter, which means it lasts at 3/4. That's what it is like red. And we then have another sharp before the C and reaching the do. This is dolce tortura. Also notice that it is the mezzo is singing. Sorry, I said soprano when I changed to the chart in Excel, but I should have mezzo. Even though truly Oralia was contralto, really doesn't matter. Just for the sake of the explanation, acerba voluta. Notice that it is in the center and the upper register, but after voluta it starts to decrease and now goes for the octave that is part of the lower register of the female voices. Fortus lentissima, another addition of half the value of the note, so a quarter plus an eighth. Fortissima agonia. Agonia, the agonia goes high and we go back to the center, but then we go back to the lower register. So if you see, there are too many changes that can make the life of a singer difficult. Also, our explanation today is about the volume. And notice that as for the voice, so far we have not found any notation on the voice. This notation is for the piano. These two lines are for the left and right hand of the piano. And the only fortissimo, the double F that we have found so far, it's this one. So this version of the score does not have so many indications on the volume and the dynamics, which means it is very open for the singer to play with it. And sometimes even if you have the notation, truth is that the singer is going to do what he actually thinks. But the emotion itself of this piece is what leads the singer. So even though there is no notation on the volume of Acerba Voluta, if you're familiar with this one, you know also that the high notes natural to all the voices tend to sound higher than the central and the lower notes of any voice. So even if there is not a forte, acerba, naturally the accent, because also in Italian the accent is in acerba, acerba, voluta. Notice that voluta is also a little higher, also because in natural Italian, that's where the accent falls. So acerba, voluta, acerba, acerba, voluta, acerba voluta, dolce tortura, lentissima agonia. Agonia in this time it's going to be agonia, rapida offesa. But let's listen to this part and see how Maestra Oralia Dominguez does it, and we are going to see on the score what she's actually doing. And let me put it a little ahead here. And here we go. So we ran into a notation of dynamics. If you realized, we found it here in the tremor. We have a forte, not too much volume. Tremors mania paura. Ad amoroso sentornarmi, tenendo. If you notice, she kept the note for much longer than written because it has also a notation that it's called tenendo. So even if you didn't have a tenendo, truth is that many singers would feel like it is okay to keep the note here. Latesa. Then, as we move with it, we notice that we go back to a 6/4 that is written here, and then the music is going much more slower because we were at 160 and now we're moving at the value of 126. So it has decreased. It started this fast to it's 168, 160, and now we are moving to 126. It's like it gives you the emotion that the the character here, you notice it's in extreme agitation. But as we have reached this part now in forte, and it says agitato, notice that now we are at a value, but this is now a half, it's at 84. Um, Different notation because we have been used to the quarter, but you run exactly the same exercise. Ogai, ogai ogni ombra nella notte. And notice also that not only it appears to be slow, but there are much fewer, or there are fewer notes in each of the bars. And that's the impression that you get from putting all together. Putting together the height of the note, the duration of the note, and the volume gives you a different emotion. And we are going to perceive that emotion in the following part. This is where it started to go slower. A new change in the tempo con moto, and you notice it in the music, going to a faster tempo. And now the singer goes for a piano, oppure si pente, goes for a forte here, lower volume, piano, so you may have already noticed so far that even if you have those notations of piano, forte, etc., and I also that's how I opened this part of the volume and dynamics. It is very discretionary because the singer, according to his emotion and understanding of the music, to add more drama or to convey a certain emotion, he can decide to keep or to change that the dynamics notation to pursue his own art. That's what each of the artists does. They build, they have this as a guidance, but as long as it works, it is always nice that they may sometimes play with these indications as long as it makes sense and not do what we have shared way too many times, that they are always singing forte, fortissimo, much longer notes only to prove that you have a voice. So, da, 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 which makes all melodies, all songs very monotonous. So the mix of the three and the ones that we are going to see on the next entry next week is what makes all these pieces of music so interesting to listen. There are too many things to listen, and as there are too many things to listen, there is always something that you can discover, and that's also what makes the versions of different